George McGovern, former senator, former Democratic presidential candidate, author, and lifelong activist, is here today. He was recently reappointed by President Bush as the American ambassador to the United Nations Agencies on Food and Agriculture in Rome, and he's also written a new book. Since first founding and directing President Kennedy's Food for Peace program in the 1960s, he has championed the cause of the hungry in America. In his new book, The Third Freedom, he presents his simple plan for ending world hunger. I'm pleased to have George McGovern back at this table. Welcome back.
Nice to be on this program.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Now, what does it say that George Bush has reappointed you to this? I mean, that says something about the work you're doing, and I assume his respect for you.
Well, I was delighted. I knew his father quite well, and I've known Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, but I was grateful that the new president decided to keep me on. So far as I know, that hasn't happened with very many of the Clinton-appointed ambassadors. I'm not sure that anyone else has been asked to stay on, although there may be some that I'm not aware of. But this is a bipartisan program. You know that Bob Dole and I have been partners on anything that has to do with food assistance, and he's helping me again on these international efforts. So I just say thanks to the new president.
I want to come to this book as well as broader questions about hunger in our time in just a moment. But politics first. What do you think of the Bush beginning?
Well, you know, as a
lifelong Democrat,
I have some disagreements with the administration. I'm not going to go around airing those. There's no point in that. Especially since I've just been reappointed. I have deep convictions on public questions. There's no doubt that I'll have some disagreements with the administration. They knew that when they asked me to stay on. But what I'm hopeful for is that we can emphasize the bipartisan character of as many programs as possible, including especially feeding hungry people. Right. If there's any such thing as a truly bipartisan or even nonpartisan issue, it should be feeding the hungry.
I promise you I'll get to it and talk about your plan. Politics again. Is there a sense on your part that liberalism may have a certain resurgence now?
You know, I feel that. I think that liberalism has gone through a bad time in recent years. Rough patch. It's probably one of the reasons I was overwhelmingly defeated some years ago in a presidential race. But I sense that people are looking now for government to take a step or two that they might not have been ready for in the past. I think, for example, that health care is an issue that's come into its own. I think this problem of nutrition is another one. Education is another area where I think liberalism is going to have some resurgence. I think civil rights is an area where you can expect that. So, yes, I believe there is a resurgence. It's not overwhelming, but there is a movement out there that I think you can detect.
It's not dead yet, huh? The
idea it is not, no.
Liberalism. This book and the idea of hunger, the subtitle here is Ending Hunger in Our Time. Can we do that?
We can do that. We can't end it completely in my time, but maybe in your time we can do it. I'm 78 years old, so unless the good Lord extends my years well beyond 100, we probably won't do it in my time.
Yeah, but you've got that good South Dakota.
I never felt better in my life. Maybe I'll live long enough to see it. But let me put it this way: we can cut hunger in half. That is the number of people who suffer from hunger, which is 800 million in the world today. We can cut that in half in 15 years. I hope I'll live long enough to see that. We can reach all of the children in the world maybe in less time than that if we make that a priority item, as I hope we will. It'll take another 15 years beyond the first 15 to wipe out hunger among the remaining 400 million people. The UN is committed to the first 15 years of that. I'd like to see them rather soon enunciate a commitment to remove hunger for everybody.
You've got some 5-step programs and some other things here. One of the points that you make, which seems crucial, is that hunger and education can come together.
Absolutely.
Because it's the way to get kids back to school.
There are 300 million school-age kids in Asia, Africa, Latin America, some in Eastern Europe, including the former Soviet Union. Of that 300 million who don't receive any school lunch, no food at all during the school day, 130 million don't go to school. They're mostly girls because of the favoritism towards boys in these third world countries. But what happens when you start a school lunch program? We know what happens because we have pilot programs operating in 30 different countries. They're not nationwide programs, but they're big enough to give you reliable statistics. The first thing that happens is that school attendance almost doubles, and the girls go to school as well as the boys. Academic performance rises dramatically, and an interesting thing happens with the girls. Illiterate girls tend to get married when they're 12, 13, 14 years of age. They have an average of 6 children for each girl. A girl that goes to school marries later in life. She has more concern about her own well-being, exercises more restraint in the spacing of children, commands more respect from boys and girls, boys and men, than do illiterate young women. And that girl who has been schooled has an average of 2.9 children. So you cut the birth rate in half through education. You improve the health, you improve their education. Almost everything works better when you can pull children into school with a school lunch program.
Do we need, I've had people on this program talk about the drug problem in America, or talk about AIDS in America and around the world. And they always, many of them will say, what we need is a kind of czar. We need one dominant personality with force, who's a can-do person, man or woman, say someone like, they used to say Schwarzkopf. Do we need that, someone who will exercise the bully pulpit on the part of those who are hungry?
Well, that's why I wanted to be on your program, because
you're stepping up for that role.
I'm trying to step into that role, but I think it ought to be a United Nations role. I don't think the United States ought to do this alone.
But is the United States doing it in a aggressive enough way?
Not yet, but I'm
going to
let a little time go by until they get settled in, and then I'm going to ask for an appointment with the President and with the Secretary of State, and I'm going to tell them where we are today on this hunger problem, what the United States has done, and then ask for their support for an expanded commitment for this year we're in now. The 300 million was in the year 2000. Now we need maybe 400 million this year and 500 million 2 years from now. Then we can level off at that point, and I think meanwhile we need to be concentrating on other countries too.
What do you think caused you to become a progressive? I mean, what was it in your own background and your own experience that led you to the political philosophy that has been identified with you?
Well, that's interesting, because I grew up in South Dakota as the son of strong Republican parents. My father was a Wesleyan Methodist minister. The one big thing he and I had in common is that we both supported the St. Louis Cardinal baseball team.
Because you could hear them on the radio.
That's right. And I still support them to this day. It's the first thing I look at in the paper during the baseball season. But I grew up in a strong Republican family. I don't think my parents ever voted for a Democrat. But
even FDR?
Even FDR.
Especially FDR.
But I'll tell you what they taught me. My father listened to all of those fireside chats of FDR's. He greatly respected Roosevelt, and when his parishioners would complain about Roosevelt, my father would always say, now look, Brother Smith, the man is doing the best he knows how. So let's not knock him too hard. I always thought maybe once he might have sneaked a vote in there for FDR, but he always
one of them, maybe 32 or 36 or 40. Maybe 40.
Yeah.
When we were back in the war, that's when he
yeah. Whoever was in the White House, whether a Democrat or Republican, my father would always say, the man is doing the best he knows how. Don't knock him too hard. Not a bad rule. But I think what led me to become a progressive or a liberal or whatever you want to call me is that I saw what the Depression did to people in my state. Hard-working farmers that went broke, bankers that went bankrupt, stores that closed. It was a sad time. And then I saw Franklin Roosevelt's strong New Deal measures make a difference. The CCC camp for young men, the Works Progress Administration that built courthouses and other things that are still standing. And I just decided that we needed a positive, strong government to deal with problems like that.
Reminds me of Fritz Hollings used to say, when I hear all those people, he would say, when I hear all those people talking about why they don't like government, I want to ask them, what do they think of the veterans, of the GI Bill? And what do they think of public schools? And what do they think of a series of things like that that most of us now take for granted as part of an American opportunity, right?
That's absolutely right. I agree with Senator Hollings on that. This country has benefited enormously from liberalism. Liberalism gave us the civil rights movement that is so valuable to the whole country. Liberalism gave us Social Security. It gave us guaranteed bank deposits. Those are important things in our lives, and so many other things. The rural electrification program that brought lighting and electricity to the farms of America, TVA, all of those things were the hallmarks of liberalism. Let me put it to you this way.
Social Security.
Social Security. Let me put it to you this way. I can't think of any major government program which is now endorsed by both parties that did not begin as a liberal initiative over conservative opposition.
But at the same time, you have lived long enough and have been in public and private life to see where there have been abuses and where they have been where they have not been administered or had the full impact that they might have if they were implemented better or with more wisdom, right?
That's the role of a good, conscientious conservative, to look at these programs that they initially opposed and try to make them work better.
Make them better.
Right.
George McGovern has written a book called The Third Freedom, Ending Hunger in Our Time, an issue that he has for a long, long time felt passionate about. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time.